It feels like my life has been torn apart, and I'm barely holding it together. I just need to get this off my chest, even if it's to strangers on the internet. For almost 30 years, I thought I had the kind of life that most people dream of. I married my wife, Linda, when we were young. She was 20, and I was 22. We were broken, but we were happy. We built our life together from the ground up, raising 2 daughters, Betty and Maria, who meant everything to me. Betty, my oldest at 26, has always been the overachiever, valedictorian in high school, graduated at the top of her college class, and now she's getting married this fall to her longtime boyfriend. Maria, my youngest at 24, is the carefree one. She's sweet, always smiling, and has been incredibly close to me since she was little. I always thought I had a great relationship with both of them. Linda and I had a solid marriage. At least, that's what I thought. Sure, we had our ups and downs, financial struggles when the kids were young, arguments now and then, health scares, but through it all, we stuck together. I truly believed we were a team, and I imagined us growing old together, sitting on the porch, reminiscing about our younger days. I loved her with everything I had. Then last week, everything fell apart. It started like any other weekday. Linda told me she was going out for dinner with Betty and Maria. They do this regularly, every couple of weeks, girls' dinner, as they call it. It's their time to catch up, laugh, and talk about things they don't want to share with me. I never minded. In fact, I loved that they were close. It made me proud as a husband and father, like I'd done something right in raising a family that loved each other so much. That night, Linda was upstairs getting ready, and I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through the news on my phone. I can remember it so clearly, the sound of her phone buzzing on the counter. It wasn't unusual. She gets messages from the girls all the time, especially when they're making plans. Without thinking, I picked it up. I'm not proud of what I did next. I didn't have any reason to be suspicious, but something made me open the message. It was from an unsaved number. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." I froze. My first reaction was confusion. This couldn't be right. It had to be a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't what it looked like. I stared at the message for what felt like forever, my mind racing. Finally, I tapped on the thread to see the rest of the conversation. What I found shattered me. The messages weren't long, but they didn't need to be. They told me everything I needed to know. The texts were from her boss, and they were making plans to meet for dinner. But it was clear this wasn't just a business dinner. The tone of the messages was flirty, affectionate. There were texts from earlier that week, like, "I miss you. Once a week isn't enough." Linda replied, "I miss you too." My stomach turned. My heart started racing. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped the phone. This was my wife, the woman I'd built my life with, the mother of my children. She was having an affair. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to march upstairs and confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. I was in shock, still trying to process what I'd just seen. I needed more information. I needed to be absolutely sure. A few minutes later, Linda came downstairs, dressed up and looking as beautiful as ever. She smiled at me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Don't wait up, okay?" Her voice was so casual, so warm, as if everything was completely normal. I don't know how I kept my composure, but I managed to say, "Have fun with the girls." As soon as she walked out the door, I grabbed her phone and turned on location sharing. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd never felt the need to spy on her, or anyone else for that matter. But in that moment, I didn't care. I needed to know the truth. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone, waiting for her location to update. When it finally did, my heart sank even further. She wasn't heading to the restaurant where she and the girls usually met. Instead, she was going somewhere else, a place we'd been to many times as a family. I quickly texted Betty and Maria. "What time are you meeting Mom for dinner?" Both of them responded almost immediately. Betty said, 7 o'clock. "Can't wait to see her," and Maria said something similar. They were lying. My own daughters were lying to me. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it, but at that moment, I knew Linda wasn't the only one betraying me. My daughters were part of it too. I waited a little longer, watching Linda's location. She finally arrived at the restaurant. My heart pounding, I grabbed my car keys and drove there. When I got to the restaurant, I parked outside and looked through the window. It didn't take long to spot her. She was sitting at a table near the back with her boss. They were holding hands, laughing, completely unaware that I was watching them. It felt like a knife in my chest. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of them. I don't even know why I did it, maybe to prove to myself that it was real, that I wasn't imagining things. Then I drove away, sitting in my car, staring at the picture of my wife with another man. A wave of emotions hit me. Anger, sadness, disbelief. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to face her, how to confront her. So I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened our family group chat and sent the picture. Just the picture with a simple caption. Glad you're enjoying girls' dinner? Then I turned off my phone and drove to my brother's house. I wasn't ready to deal with the fallout. I couldn't face it yet. That night, I lay awake in my brother's guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how my life had fallen apart so quickly. I had always thought of myself as a good husband, a good father, but now I wasn't so sure. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my family, felt like a lie. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. After I sent the photo to the family group chat and turned off my phone, I drove aimlessly for a while before finally pulling into my brother's driveway. It was late, but he let me in without asking too many questions. He could tell something was wrong. I guess it was written all over my face. I didn't tell him everything. I just said I needed a place to crash for the night. He offered me a beer, but I wasn't in the mood. I just wanted to be alone. I spent the night on his couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind was racing, replaying everything that had happened in the past few hours. I couldn't stop thinking about seeing them together in the restaurant. The way Linda smiled at her boss. The way they leaned in close, holding hands like teenagers in love. It made me sick. How long had this been going on? How had I been so blind? And then there was Betty and Maria. The way they lied to me so casually, like it was nothing. I raised them to be honest, to have integrity, yet here they were, helping their mother cover up an affair. It felt like a betrayal on an entirely different level. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately lit up with notifications, texts, missed calls, voicemails. Linda had called me dozens of times, and Betty and Maria had texted me as well. I didn't have the strength to go through everything at once, so I skimmed through the messages. Linda's messages were exactly what I expected. Please call me. I can explain. It's not what you think. We need to talk. I couldn't bring myself to listen to her voicemails. I knew hearing her voice would only make me angrier. Maria's messages were different. She sent me text after text, apologizing profusely. Dad, I'm so sorry. I never should have lied to you. I hate myself for what I did. Please don't hate me. Can we please talk? I'm so scared I've ruined everything. She even had her boyfriend, Josh, text me. Hey, this is Josh. Maria's really upset and having a panic attack. She's scared you'll never forgive her. Please call her. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't know what to say. Betty, on the other hand, was a different story. Her text was short and cold. Dad, I'm sorry you found out this way, but I think you're overreacting. Don't throw away a good marriage over one mistake. Overreacting? One mistake? My blood boiled. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown betrayal, not only by Linda, but by Betty and Maria too. They had lied to me. They had helped their mother cover up something that completely shattered our family. I couldn't help but replay all the times they must have lied to my face. Every time I asked about their plans, they'd tell me they were going to dinner, knowing full well what Linda was really doing. They'd smile at me, acting like everything was normal, all while hiding the truth. I spent most of the day stewing in my anger and heartbreak. My brother tried to talk to me, but I wasn't ready to open up yet. I needed time to process everything. By the afternoon, I realized I couldn't let this go without saying something. I started by texting Maria. Maria, I love you, but what you've done has hurt me deeply. I need space to figure things out. She replied almost instantly. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll never forgive myself for this. I love you so much. I didn't respond. Then, I texted Betty. Betty, this isn't a mistake. This is a betrayal from my entire family. Please don't contact me until I'm ready to talk. She didn't reply, but I knew she must have shown Linda because, shortly after, Linda started texting me again. Don't take this out on the girls. They were just trying to protect me. They didn't mean to hurt you. I ignored her. I wasn't interested in excuses. Later that evening, I finally told my brother the full story. I showed him the messages, the photo, everything. He was furious on my behalf. You need to cut them all off, he said. They clearly don't respect you. Why should you keep them in your life? His words hit me hard because deep down, I knew he was right. But cutting off my daughters? That was a step I wasn't sure I could take. That night, I started thinking about what came next. I knew my marriage to Linda was over. There was no coming back from this, and honestly, I didn't even want to try. But what about Betty and Maria? Could I ever trust them again? Could I ever look at them the same way, knowing what they did? I decided I needed time, Time to think, time to process, time to figure out how to move forward. But one thing was certain. My life, as I knew it, was over. The fallout didn't hit like an explosion. It lingered, a slow, suffocating burn. By the time I got back to my brother's place that evening, I wasn't angry anymore. I was numb. All the emotions I had felt earlier, the rage, the disbelief, the heartbreak, had given way to a dull, crushing weight in my chest. It felt like the life I had built, the one I thought was solid, was crumbling, and all I could do was watch. The first thing I noticed when I turned on my phone was the silence. Earlier, it had been full of frantic notifications, missed calls, and texts. But now, there was nothing. No more desperate messages from Maria. No follow-ups from Betty. No voice messages from Linda. It was like they had finally realized I wasn't going to respond and had given up, or maybe they were regrouping. Who knows? Either way, the silence was unsettling. The quiet gave me time to think, and that wasn't a good thing. When the anger faded, all that was left was the hurt, the questions that kept swirling in my mind like a tornado. How long had this been going on? How many times had Linda lied to my face? Did Betty and Maria ever feel guilty about what they were doing? Or was this just normal for them? Betraying their father to protect their mother? That night, after hours of silence and stewing in my thoughts, I finally sat down with my brother in his living room. I knew I couldn't carry this weight alone anymore, so I decided to tell him everything, to finally let it all out. I needed someone to hear me, to listen without judgment, even if there was nothing anyone could do to fix it. I sat across from him, my hands trembling slightly as I began. The weight of the betrayal felt heavy on my chest, but I pushed through. I found something on Linda's phone. I started, my voice steady but thick with emotion. Text messages, lies. I couldn't ignore it, and it led me to something else. My brother didn't interrupt, just gave me a nod, silently urging me to keep going. I told him everything. The text between Linda and her boss, the lies Betty and Maria had told me, the way they'd all covered up what Linda was doing. I even told him about the picture I'd taken of Linda and her boss at the restaurant, how I just stood there watching them, the feeling in my gut sinking deeper with every passing second. I couldn't take it anymore, I said, swallowing hard. I sent the picture to the family group chat. I didn't even care anymore. I just needed them to know, to see what was really going on. My brother leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face, a deep frown forming on his face. I could see the anger in his eyes as he processed what I just said. He didn't speak right away, just let the silence hang between us. That's messed up, he finally said, his voice tight with frustration. I don't even know where to start. I mean, I always thought Linda was, a little too polished, too perfect, but I didn't think she'd do something like this. And the girls, man, he shook his head, his voice quiet with disbelief. I don't know. It's low. His words, though filled with anger, gave me a small sense of relief. I needed to hear that I wasn't going crazy, that I wasn't losing my mind. It wasn't just me seeing things through a fog of rage and confusion. Someone else saw it too. But even though he was angry on my behalf, it didn't make the situation any easier. It didn't take away the pain, the betrayal. My brother's anger was helpful for a moment, but it was mine that had been festering for hours. I don't know what to do, man, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. I can't even look at them the same way anymore. I don't even want to go back to that house. I feel like everything's falling apart. My marriage is over, and now, I can't even trust my daughters. They lied to me. They helped her cover it all up. My brother stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out what to say, how to help. He wasn't sure either. You need to cut them all off, he said finally, his voice low but firm. They clearly don't respect you. Why should you keep them in your life? His words hit hard, and I felt a stab of guilt. Could I really cut them out like that? Could I just walk away from my family? It felt impossible. But deep down, I knew he was right. They had all betrayed me in different ways. The trust one once had in them was shattered beyond repair. I don't know, I muttered, feeling defeated. Cutting them off. I'm not sure I can do that. Not with Betty and Maria. They're still my daughters. My brother nodded, understanding, but the frustration was still clear in his face. I get it, he said, but you can't let them walk all over you. Not like this. You need to take a step back and think about what's best for you. What about you, man? What are you going to do? I didn't have an answer. Not yet, anyway. I had so many questions swirling in my head, so many emotions crashing against each other. I didn't even know where to start. I need time, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need time to think, to figure this all out. I can't just go back to normal like nothing happened. This isn't just a mistake. It's betrayal. And I don't know how to handle that. My brother didn't offer me any easy solutions. He didn't tell me what to do. He just sat with me, letting the silence settle, understanding that there was nothing to fix right away. It wasn't about finding an immediate answer. It was about giving myself the space to process what had happened, to figure out where to go from here. The next morning, I decided it was time to stop wallowing in my anger and start taking action. The first thing I needed to do was get my finances in order. I couldn't afford to focus on the emotional mess if I didn't protect myself first. So, I spent the majority of the day canceling joint accounts, transferring money into a separate account Linda couldn't touch, and securing anything that could be at risk in the divorce. I wasn't going to let her use my grief as an opportunity to catch me off guard. But it wasn't just about Linda. As I reviewed my accounts, I couldn't stop thinking about the tens of thousands of dollars I had spent, money I had saved up for Betty's wedding. All that money, gone. For a daughter who had lied to my face and helped her mother betray me. The thought made me sick to my stomach. I made a note to discuss this with my lawyer. Maybe I couldn't get that money back, but I sure as hell wasn't going to spend another cent on them. By the afternoon, I felt ready to move on to the next step. I called a lawyer. Actually, I called several. My brother had advised me to meet with a few before making a choice. So, I spent the rest of the day in law offices, retelling my story to strangers who tried their hardest to stay professional, but I could see the judgment in their eyes. By the end of the day, I had made my decision. I picked someone who was tough, smart, and most importantly, aggressive. I told her I wanted the divorce to be quick and clean, but I also wanted to make sure Linda didn't get anything she didn't deserve. She reassured me, claiming she had handled plenty of cases like this. While it didn't completely ease my mind, at least I felt like I was in capable hands. That night, as I sat alone in my brother's guest room, I started thinking about what I would say to Linda. I hadn't confronted her yet, mostly because I didn't trust myself to stay calm, and because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of an explanation. What could she possibly say that would make any of this okay? But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Eventually, I'd have to face her, and when that moment came, I wanted to be prepared. I couldn't let myself get drawn into her excuses or her tears. I needed to stay focused and remind myself of why I was doing this. So, I wrote everything down, the questions I wanted to ask, the points I needed to make, all the emotions I hadn't yet processed. I wasn't sure if I'd actually say everything I'd written, but putting it on paper gave me a sense of control, like I wasn't just a passive victim in all of this. The hardest part, though, was thinking about Betty and Maria. I hadn't spoken to them since sending those texts, and I wasn't sure I could. How do you talk to your daughters after learning they've been lying to you for months? How do you even begin to rebuild trust after something like that? I wanted to believe Maria's apologies were sincere, that she was truly sorry for her role in all of this, but how could I trust her? How could I believe anything she said after everything I'd uncovered? And Betty, her cold, dismissive response cut me to the core. I'd always known she was closer to Linda, but I never imagined she'd take her side in something this serious. It felt like she had made her choice, and it wasn't me. That night, I made another decision. I wasn't going to reach out to them. If they wanted to fix things, they'd have to come to me. I wasn't going to chase after them, begging for their forgiveness or explanations. They made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange sense of calm for the first time since everything had exploded. I didn't feel completely lost anymore. I had a plan. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. I was done being the victim. From now on, I was going to take control. After 2 days of hiding out in my brother's guest room, dodging calls and sorting through my emotions, I knew it was time to face Linda. Avoiding her wouldn't change anything, and I had things I needed to say. Things she needed to hear. I sent her a text late that night. "We need to talk tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the house." She replied almost immediately, "I'll be there. Please just let me explain." I couldn't believe her audacity. Explain what? I thought. There was nothing left to explain. I wasn't interested in her excuses or half-hearted justifications, but I didn't reply. I'd save that for when we were face to face. The next morning, I woke up early, barely able to sleep. I drove to the house, the place that used to be our home. As soon as I stepped inside, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia mixed with bitterness. This was where we'd built our life, where we'd raised our kids, celebrated holidays, and made memories. Now it felt like a hollow shell, tainted by everything that had come to light. Linda showed up right on time. She walked in nervously, her eyes red and puffy like she hadn't slept in days. She was holding her phone like a shield, and I noticed immediately that she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. That detail hit me harder than I expected. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," she said softly, standing just inside the door as if she were afraid to come closer. "Don't thank me," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. "I'm not here to make things easier for you." That seemed to set the tone for the conversation. We sat down at the dining room table, the same table where we'd shared so many family meals. Linda started talking, her voice trembling, going through the motions, saying all the things I expected to hear. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. She kept repeating herself, cycling through the same tired excuses, as if saying them over and over would somehow make them true. "Stop," I said, my patience running thin. "I don't want to hear excuses. I want answers." She looked at me, confused, as if she didn't understand what I was asking. "How long?" I demanded. She hesitated, clearly trying to figure out what would be the best answer. "A few months," she said, her voice faltering. "Try again." I spat, fury rising in my chest. Her face crumpled as she realized she couldn't lie her way out of this. "Almost a year," she whispered, barely audible. "A year." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I clenched my fist under the table, trying desperately to keep my anger in check. "An entire year of lies." My voice shook with rage. "A year of you pretending everything was fine, all while you were screwing around behind my back." She flinched, but I couldn't bring myself to feel any sympathy. How could I? How many times had she smiled at me, kissed me, told me she loved me, all while sneaking around behind my back? I couldn't wrap my head around it. "How long have they known?" I demanded, my voice tight. Linda winced, her eyes darting away. "Not the whole time," she mumbled. "A couple of months ago?" I pressed, unable to keep my disgust out of my voice. "I didn't want to drag them into this." "But you did," I interrupted sharply. "You made them part of your lies. Do you have any idea what that's done to me?" She didn't respond. Instead, she started crying, full-on sobbing, as if that would somehow make it all better. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I was so unhappy." "Unhappy?" My voice echoed in the empty house, growing louder with each word. "You were unhappy, so you decided to blow up our family? You were unhappy, so you cheated on me and dragged our daughters into your mess? Do you have any idea what you've done, Linda?" She just sat there, crying into her hands, unable to respond. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorry for her. "You've ruined everything," I said, quieter now, the weight of it all sinking in. "Not just our marriage, but my relationship with Betty and Maria. How am I supposed to trust them after this? How am I supposed to look at them and not see this betrayal?" "I didn't want them to lie to you," she whispered through her tears. "I didn't want any of this." "Then why did you do it?" I shot back, frustration building again. "Why didn't you come to me? If you were so unhappy, why didn't you try to fix things instead of sneaking around behind my back?" She didn't answer. Maybe she didn't have one, or maybe she thought whatever she said wouldn't change what had already been done. After a long silence, I stood up, the decision finally clear. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You'll hear from my lawyer soon." "Please don't do this," she begged, standing up, her voice pleading. "We can work through this. We can fix it." "There's nothing to fix," I snapped, my voice cold. "You made your choice and now I'm making mine." Before I walked out, I turned to face her one last time. "By the way, don't expect me to pay for Betty's wedding anymore. She can ask her boss to foot the bill since you two are so good at keeping secrets." Her face crumpled again, but I didn't stick around to see her reaction. As I walked through the house and out the door, I paused in the hallway, staring at the family photos on the wall. There we were, me, Linda, Betty, and Maria, smiling like the perfect family. I used to love those photos, but now they felt like a cruel joke. I grabbed the nearest one, a picture from Betty's high school graduation, and smashed it against the wall. The glass shattered, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. But it didn't last. As I walked to my car, something hit me. This was just the beginning. The confrontation with Linda was over, but the real battle was still ahead. I still had to face Betty and Maria. I still had to figure out how to move forward. And I still had to confront the painful reality that the life I thought I had, the life I'd spent nearly 30 years building, was gone. The confrontation with Linda had cleared the air, but it hadn't made things easier. If anything, it made the betrayal feel more real, more weighty. The anger I felt toward Linda was sharp, but it was focused. I knew what she had done and why. And now, I was walking away. The situation with Betty and Maria was far more complicated. They were my daughters, my flesh and blood, but they had chosen her. The day after I told Linda I was filing for divorce, I decided to meet with Betty and Maria separately. I couldn't just ignore them, and I wasn't ready to completely cut them off without at least hearing them out. But I knew this wasn't going to be some casual chat. The trust between us was shattered, and I needed to know if there was anything left to salvage. I started with Maria. She'd always been the more emotional one, and her texts over the past few days had been frantic, bordering on desperate. I asked her to meet me at a park near my brother's house. When she arrived, it was obvious she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were puffy, and she kept nervously fidgeting with her hands. As soon as we sat down on a bench, she burst into tears. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my anger in check, but it was hard. "Then why did you lie to me?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "Why did you cover for your mother? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" She wiped her eyes, looking guilty and lost. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "She told me about it a couple of months ago." I was mad at her, but she begged me not to say anything. She said she'd end it soon, that it was just a phase. I didn't know what to do. My fists clenched. "You didn't know what to do? You knew it was wrong, but you chose to protect her. You betrayed me, Maria. You stood by her and lied to my face." She shook her head, her sobs coming faster now. "I didn't want to hurt you, Dad. I swear." I leaned forward, my voice low but seething. "You already did. You both did. And now, I have to deal with the wreckage. All the lies, the deceit, and the fact that my own daughters turned their back on me." I stared at Maria, struggling to process her words. "So, you decided to protect her instead of telling me the truth?" I demanded. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought she was going to stop. I didn't want to blow up the family if there was a chance she'd fix things. I didn't know it would get this far. "That's not good enough, Maria." I shot back, my voice cold. "You don't get to excuse what you did by saying you didn't know. You knew she was cheating. You knew she was lying to me, and you went along with it. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" She broke down again, her face buried in her hands. I felt a pang of guilt watching her cry, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about sympathy. It was about the damage they'd all done to my trust. "I'm not saying this to punish you," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "But I need you to understand how deeply this has hurt me. Right now, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you the way I used to." Maria nodded, her shoulders shaking. "I'll do anything to fix this, Dad. Anything. Just tell me what to do." I didn't have an answer for her. I told her I needed time to think, then I left, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. Meeting with Betty was a completely different experience. I asked her to meet me at a coffee shop, thinking it would be better to talk in a neutral space. She showed up 10 minutes late, looking polished and composed, as if nothing had happened. That alone rubbed me the wrong way. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting down casually. I didn't waste any time. "Betty, why didn't you tell me about your mother's affair?" I demanded, my voice tense. She sighed, leaning back in her chair as if she was too calm. "Dad, I didn't want to get involved. It's between you and Mom. I thought it was better to stay out of it." "Stay out of it?" I snapped, leaning forward. I repeated myself, my voice rising with frustration. "You didn't stay out of it, Betty. You lied to me. You covered for her. That's not staying out of it. That's choosing a side." "I wasn't choosing sides," she shot back defensively. "I was trying to keep the peace. I didn't want to make things worse." "Worse for who?" I demanded, my anger boiling over. "For me? Or for your mother?" She didn't answer, and that told me everything I needed to know. "Betty, you're an adult," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. "You're getting married soon. If your fiancé did to you what your mother did to me, would you want everyone around you to lie and protect him? Or would you want someone to stand up and tell you the truth?" "That's different," she said, clearly annoyed. "Mom made a mistake. It doesn't mean you have to throw everything away." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "A mistake? Is that what you think this is?" She did not make a mistake. She betrayed me day in and day out. "It is a mistake," she said firmly, her tone growing more defensive. "People make mistakes, Dad. You don't have to burn everything to the ground because of one bad choice." "One bad choice?" I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. "Do you even hear yourself? This wasn't a bad choice. It was a betrayal. By your mother, by you, by Maria. And you're sitting here acting like I'm the one overreacting. I'm not saying that, she quickly responded, her voice softening. I just think you're being too harsh. You're hurt, I get that, but you'll regret cutting us out later. We're your family. Family doesn't lie to each other, I said, my voice tight with anger. Family doesn't cover for someone who's tearing everything apart. You and Maria didn't just lie to me. You broke my trust. And right now, I don't see how I can move past that. She crossed her arms, looking frustrated. So what? You're just going to disown us? Pretend we don't exist? I am not going to pretend. I will cut you out of my life. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The weight of it all hung in the air. Finally, I stood up. I've said what I needed to say, I told her. I really hope you never find yourself in the same situation like me. She didn't try to stop me as I walked out. That night, I sat alone in my brother's guest room, replaying both conversations in my mind. Maria seemed genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive her. Betty, on the other hand, was a different story. Her refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of what she'd done made it clear that she didn't think she was in the wrong. For the first time, I seriously considered cutting them both out of my life. It wasn't a decision I wanted to make, but the thought of trying to rebuild a relationship with people who had betrayed me so deeply felt impossible. That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I told her to revise my will. Betty and Maria were to be removed as beneficiaries. Everything, my savings, my retirement fund, the house, would go to my sister and her kids. They had always been there for me, and I knew they wouldn't betray me like my own daughters had. When I told my brother, he didn't try to talk me out of it. You're doing the right thing, he said. They made their choices. Now they can live with the consequences. The fallout was immediate. The next day, Maria called me, her voice a mess of hysterical sobs. Dad, please don't do this, she begged. I know I messed up, but I love you. I don't care about the money. I just don't want to lose you. Her words hit me harder than I expected, but I didn't let it sway me. Maria, I'll always love you, I said, my voice firm. But love doesn't mean I can forget what you did. I need time. Maybe someday we can rebuild our relationship, but right now, I can't have you in my life. She kept crying, but I held my ground until she finally hung up. Betty, predictably, took a different approach. She sent me a long email, accusing me of being petty and vindictive. You're punishing me for trying to keep the peace, she wrote. I'm just trying to avoid conflict, and now you're ruining my wedding over something that has nothing to do with me. I didn't bother responding. There was no point. Then Linda tried to intervene. She sent me an email, the tone polished, carefully constructed, like she thought I'd fall for it. She begged me not to cut the girls out of my will, claiming it wasn't fair to punish them for mistakes she made. She even had the audacity to suggest that removing them would irreparably damage the family. You're really going to play that card? I muttered to myself, rolling my eyes as I read her email. I didn't bother responding to Linda either. She could try all she wanted, but I knew the truth now. The days passed, and slowly, I started to feel lighter. The anger was still there, but the suffocating weight of the betrayal wasn't as overwhelming anymore. Cutting ties hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. I needed to protect myself, emotionally, not just financially. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. It's been a month now since I cut Betty and Maria out of my will. I haven't heard from them directly, and I'm fine with that. I've heard from mutual friends that Betty is scrambling to find the money to cover the wedding expenses I'd been paying for. I don't feel a damn bit sorry for her. She made her choice when she sided with her mother, and now she's dealing with the consequences. Betty's marriage crumbled just as swiftly as mine had, though in a cruel twist, it mirrored my own experience. It wasn't long after the wedding that her husband, Greg, started showing signs of trouble. At first, Betty dismissed it. Work stress, long hours, all the usual excuses. But when Greg's behavior became impossible to ignore, Betty finally confronted him. The truth spilled out, and it was even uglier than she imagined. Greg had been cheating on her for months. Betty, devastated and betrayed, found out the hard way, through a text message he'd carelessly left on his phone. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She was no stranger to betrayal, but the depth of it, coming from her own husband, shook her to the core. She demanded answers, but Greg was evasive and defensive, barely offering a word of regret. He claimed it was a mistake, a momentary lapse, but Betty knew it wasn't just that. It was a pattern, a betrayal that went beyond just sex. It was the betrayal of trust, of her heart. Divorce was inevitable. Betty couldn't bring herself to stay with a man who destroyed what little was left of their bond. As the proceedings began, Greg did everything he could to make things as ugly as possible. He fought for half of everything, though Betty had nothing left to give. She felt the weight of the irony. A woman who had spent years protecting a man who lied to her, only to end up with nothing but pain and broken dreams. As for me, the divorce had been a long, drawn-out nightmare. After everything I'd been through, I knew I couldn't repeat the same mistakes. I had to make sure I was financially free from Linda, free from everything she had taken from me. I signed over everything I had to my sister and her kids. The house, my savings, my retirement. I couldn't bear to leave Linda or my daughters a single dime of what I had worked for all these years. They didn't deserve it. Linda certainly didn't. But the real sting came when Betty asked for help. She came to me, her eyes swollen from crying, asking if I could help her with the divorce. I had nothing to give. Nothing. I'd given it all away. There was no house, no money, no safety net left. The silence between us in that moment was deafening. I wanted to reach out, to help her, but I couldn't. I couldn't afford to. And the bitterness in my chest grew as I realized, in the end, that everything, every penny, every bit of what I had worked for, was gone. My marriage to Linda had left me with nothing but the shattered pieces of a life that once felt whole. Now, I was living with the consequences of my decisions, and I couldn't help Betty in the same way I once had. I could only watch as she went through the same pain I had, trapped in a web of lies and betrayal.